Hi guys, and welcome back to The Big Shift, where we go into exceptional life journeys and find out what really makes some of these unbelievable characters really exceptional and fascinating. Today, I have an unbelievable character. He was known as one of the top 50 most powerful and most wealthy Mafia bosses by Fortune magazine. He's he's been portrayed in Goodfellas, many other films, but I think one of the most unbelievable things about my next guest is he was one of the only people I certainly know of, a made guy in the New York Mafia at such a high level who actually walked away the right way from that life. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Franzese. Hi Michael, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
On my research today, I see some unbelievable facts about your father, Sonny, that he was actually, when he got released at 100, he was the oldest federal penitentiary serving prisoner when he come out, right?
That's true. He was the oldest inmate in the country at that time. Certainly in the federal system, possibly in the entire, federal and state system. He was the oldest.
100. Wow, that's really something. And you know what? I'm certainly happy that he come through that, Michael, and come back to you, at the end. Now, he was a very high-profile guy himself in that life, right? He was an underboss. What was Sonny like, and what was it like growing up with a father like that, Mike?
Well, I can tell you this. He passed away last year at the age of 103, and tomorrow's his birthday. He would have been 104. So, he lived a long life. My dad was such a high-profile figure. He was kind of like the John Gotti of his day. Always a major target of law enforcement, always in the media. So I grew up, idolizing my dad. I loved him. He was a great father, but, we always had law enforcement around us, and I looked at them as the enemy, people trying to hurt my dad. So I grew up in that kind of atmosphere because their presence was there all the time. I mean, they had our house under constant surveillance throughout my childhood. They had us cornered on all sides, all different agencies. So I grew up in that environment. I grew up, actually hating law enforcement as a result, when I was younger. So I had that kind of mentality, even though my dad didn't want that for me. He wanted me to go to school. He wanted me to stay out of that life. He wanted me to be a doctor. And that's the way I was headed until, things changed dramatically for me.
It's a paradox that I've certainly seen with so experienced, high-profile people who've really lived a life like that at the top end, really heavy from the top to the bottom, that actually for their own children, they want something different, because they see so much, they've known so much, they've experienced so much. So what was he actually like as a man, and what was that paradox like from the different hats, Michael, for when he would be this high-profile figure outside the door, but dad inside the door?
Well, inside, I mean, my dad, taught me some, great ways to live, I think. He always tried to give me the proper guidance. He was a great father in the house. I mean, he'd sing with us in the car, he'd make dinner for us whenever he could. He loved my mother. He was just dad, he'd attend all my, I was an athlete. He'd be at every one of my baseball and football games. And, he's very concerned about, my marks and grades in school. And he was just a loving dad. I mean, I have to say that. Inside the house, he would never talk about what was going on in the outside world. He tried not to let it interfere in our house. So it was hard because, the influence was there. He kept getting arrested, quite a bit. So, but he tried to be as good a dad as he possibly could be.
So what was the transition that, I mean, I get it, the environment, all this stuff, what you're exposed to, the genes, you're there, you idolize your dad, he's the anchor, you know what he is, what he's not, he's a wonderful person, as your dad, right? So what was the forces? Because he was trying to keep you away from this life, Michael, to protect you, right? So yeah. What was the forces and the transition that propelled you forward to go into that life?
Well, throughout the 1960s, my dad was indicted 3 times in the state of New York for very serious crimes. I went to trial 3 times, at each time, was found not guilty. But then he was indicted in federal court in 1966 for masterminding a nationwide string of bank robberies. He went to trial, he got convicted, and they gave him a 50-year sentence. So he went off to do his time in 1970 when I was a pre-med student at Hofstra University, and I was devastated when my dad went in because he was 50. Big add 50 on top of that, he'd never come out of prison alive. So, Joe Colombo was the boss of my family, and he kind of took me under his wing. I started meeting a lot of my dad's friends. Mike, what are you doing going to school? If you don't help your father, he's going to die in prison. My dad told me that he was innocent, he was framed, he wasn't a bank robber. I believed him, and I felt that I needed to help him. So I lose interest in school, and I go visit Dad in Leavenworth Penitentiary. We're in the visiting room, and we kind of argued about this because he didn't want me to quit school. But I said, Dad, you're going to die in here. If we don't overturn this conviction, if we don't prove your innocence, we need money to pay lawyers. So it was at that meeting that he realized my mind was made up, and he proposed me for membership into the family. He said, because if you're going to be on the street, I want you to do it the right way. Yeah. And that was the day he proposed me. And, somebody has to propose you, sponsor you, say you have what it takes to be a member. And for me, it was my dad.
Yeah. So I get that, he wanted you to do it the right way and protect you again, I guess, So how long was you you went through that period, you come from good blood, as they say, yeah? Good stock, as we say over here, Michael, right? So that would have expedited, because they know your history, they know you, they knew your dad, they know your way of thinking and all that stuff. So how long did it take then before you got actually made as a made member?
It took me, I was a recruit for about 2 years, because you got to prove yourself worthy in different ways. And so it was about 2 years. And on Halloween night, October 31st, Halloween here in the States, 1975, I took the blood oath and became a sworn made member of the life.
So tell us, what was that actually like, Mark? I know it's fascinating to many people and they may have heard it, but what was the feelings like and the experience like of that ritual?
It was, it was very important to me. I took it very serious. I was going to be something, that my dad was part of. It was exhilarating to me, I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. And I felt good about it, to be honest with you. When you come into the life, you're told it's a life of respect and honor, and I was going to be something, that my dad wanted me to be. I wanted to make him proud. So for me, it was a great feeling, absolutely great.
And many of them people there on that night, they're not here, right, Michael?
No, there were 6 of us that night, and the other 5 are all dead.
That's just, an understanding of what that brotherhood is, right? So what was the actual ritual? I know it's quick, but could you tell us the ritual? And
it was. We were taken to a location. It was actually Joe Colombo's son had a catering hall in Brooklyn, and so we were taken there late at night. And the 6 of us were brought into a room individually, and the boss was seated at the head of a horseshoe configuration. The underboss and the consigliere were to his left and right. All of the Capo regimes were alongside of them. We had about 15 in our family at that point. And I walked down the aisle. It was a dimly lit room late at night. They wanted you to understand the seriousness of what you were getting involved in. And I stood in front of the boss and held out my hand. He took a knife, cut my finger. Some blood dropped on the floor. This is a blood oath. I cupped my hands. He took a picture of a saint. It was a Catholic altar card. Put it in my hands and lit it aflame. And it didn't hurt. It burnt quickly. It was merely symbolic. And he said, tonight, Michael Franzese, you are born again into a new life, into Cosa Nostra. Violate what you know about this life. Betray your brothers. You'll die. Burn in hell like this saint is burning in your hands. Said, do you accept? And I said, yes, I do. And that's the oath. The other 5 guys went in, they all took the oath, and that's how you become a made man. And, you first come in, your rank is a soldier. That's the official rank when you take that oath. And it all started from that point for me.
Well, yeah, when I was in prison, I was high security prison. I was away with some of them made Sicilian guys. One was Francesco De Carlo, another one was Filippo Monteleone. I just wondered. Now, there's a lot of stuff in one, but I have to ask you: is the oath the same over there for the Sicilian guys, or is there a little difference?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, there's little variations with each family, but several years ago, I think I was involved in a show called The 10 Commandments of the Mafia, and the reason that show came out is there's somebody, a made guy in Sicily, was actually on the run for many, many years, and when they finally found him in this little cave, he had a list, the 10 Commandments of the Mafia. And he described the ritual and everything else. So, and it was pretty much the same as the way it's held here in the States. So I think pretty much the same everywhere, little variations, but that's it.
Okay, great. So what happened kind of after that? So what happened? So, you take your place and, I get there's a difference, there's certainly that profound difference that you've gone through that. So what was your journey like then? Did it kind of speed up? And I guess it changed the dynamic in some kind of way, right? When you're actually made.
Yeah, well, it's at that point that you kind of find your way in that life and you establish yourself as being, a money earner, a guy that really makes things happen, or a guy that maybe is going to be doing more of the work, the kind of, work on the street. So for me, I was motivated to do two things. I wanted to get my dad out of prison, and I wanted to make money. And, in that life, if you know how to use that life to benefit you in business, and you have a head for business, could benefit you, greatly. So I became a force in that regard because I did know how to use that life. I was entrepreneurial in that regard. I went on to do a lot of things that hadn't been done before in the family, made a very significant amount of money for myself and the family. So you rise in ranks when you do that. And I did get my dad out of prison on parole after 10 years. The problem is he kept going back. He kept getting violated for association. He kept going back. But we did do what we were set out to do.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly how it would be, but I can imagine that when you're hooked with that kind of thing and such a high profile, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and they apply a lot of pressure. That you always had a head for business, Michael. This was the thing. You was super talented at. It's fair to say, and the gasoline thing that you had, where taking the tax for the government, you was to go to prison for this later, right?
Yeah.
But you was, unbelievable scam. Really clever, right? But you was taking $8 million a week from that, right?
Yeah, we averaged, there's some weeks we took 5,000-6,000, and some weeks we took 12,000-13,000, million. But we averaged $7-8 million a week. Yeah, pretty consistently for a couple of years.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I found this fascinating because I know what a life like this can be, right? And the kind of dangers it brings with the guy who like jealousy and all kinds of things that you have to manage, right? And but because you were so good at earning in the family, of course, then there's a bit of green eye comes out, Michael, in there. And then in a sense, you kind of become so powerful in the way that you're the guy that's really doing it. You're the man at the moment. You're the man that's earning the money. You're the man that seems to have the golden touch. That creates other kind of concerns, doesn't it, Michael? How did that go for you?
Well, it does. Look, you got to understand, the street life can be a very treacherous life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jealousy. And, when you're a younger guy like I was, the older timers kind of resent that. Some of them do anyway. And so you have to deal with that. You got to be pretty diplomatic, and you got to know how to handle that kind of, dynamic that you're dealing with. So, look, I made a lot of friends, and there were people that resented, what I was doing, the lifestyle that I had at the time. But you got to learn how to navigate those waters. That life, you have to be a good student of the life. And fortunately, my father was, my consigliere. He was the guy that guided me. I was a good listener. I listened well. And, then I used my own instincts to navigate. And so it worked out well. I mean, I had to deal with stuff, my boss, was concerned about me for a while because there was a story that came out. I don't remember exactly what publication it was, but it said I was getting strong enough to break away from the Colombos and start my own family. It was a total fictional story. I don't know where they got it from. It was made up. But, that gets into people's heads. Yeah. I had a big crew. I had the Russians that were involved with me. We were making a tremendous amount of money, and, we were pretty popular, the crew at that time. So I had to deal with that. But, it's part of the life.
Yeah, there's something you said there. It just hit me, Michael, and it was about the student of the life. But because what you've done is remarkable, I have to say, and even that's why I highlighted that point about the people who was made that day with you. You're the only one that's alive. You've gone on to do so much more. You're very, very unique in your journey. But I think one of the reasons for that was because of your father. You had such a teacher who give you all the tricks and said, look, this is the way you need to do certain things, and you need to watch out for certain things like this. This is bad, right? That just come to me, and I can see that because, you've, so would you say that's right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best, I'm one of 7. I've got 6 brothers and sisters. And my dad said to me, Mike, I got to say it, son, you're the only one that really, really listens to me. And you hang on every word. And because I respected him. And, one of the best things my dad taught me, he said, Mike, in this life and in life in general, you have to be a good listener. Don't lead with your mouth. Be a good listener, take things in, measure your responses and your words, because in this life, it could be critical if you say the wrong things. I mean, you could pay for it with your life. And that has served me well, certainly throughout that life, and certainly in my life now. I try to measure my words very carefully. And I listen, I let people talk. And in that life, it was the best advice that he could give me.
Yeah, I see it. I really do. There were some unbelievable characters of today. Let's cover just a couple, to get the idea. One of the most famous ones, I suppose, John Gotti. What was he actually like, Michael?
Look, he was tough to do business with. John had a tremendous ego, no doubt about it. I had a couple of, business disputes with him, and he was tough. Very, very, very tough in that regard because he wasn't a business guy. His ego just said to him, no matter what the situation is, no matter what I'm involved in, I have to win, period. And so even if he didn't have a good grasp of the situation, he was going to win. He was going to win the argument. He had to think he came out ahead. So, in some ways it's easy to deal with somebody like that because right away what you got to deal with, and you just have to know going in what you're going to do to get what you want. And but on a social level, he was a lot of fun. You go out, we have a couple of drinks. He was out there, his attention around him all the time. So he was a lot of fun in that regard. But I will say this: he wasn't good for the life. You can't be that out there. You can't be thumbing your nose in the government's face. You can't be, wearing Brioni suits and think that you're a movie star in that life. It's just no good. And so he wasn't good for the life in that regard. But I will give him this amount of respect. He would never snitch. He lived by the code, and he died by the code. And, same like my dad. My dad wasn't as flamboyant as he was, but there's certain amount of respect you have to have for somebody like that. And I respected him for that.
Yeah. So, with Sammy the Bull, there's so much been written about this, and look, I see why he moved on Paul Castellano because it was going to come back on him. He moved first, it's fair to say. He was in trouble because of the dealing and the different stuff was going on. And, the depositions was going to come out. It wasn't going to look good. So, let me ask you, with Sammy the Bull, Gravano, there's a lot about Sammy, but there's a lot been said that actually that Sammy says, look, John wanted me to take away. He wasn't straight with me. I was straight with that guy. What do you think about that? From that dynamic? What's your feeling on that, Michael? Really?
Well, look, I wasn't there with them to have those conversations personally. I think at this point I'd have to take Sammy's word for it. If he felt that John was betraying him and pushed him into a corner, he did what he had to do. And I don't want to put myself in that position and say Sammy was wrong or Sammy was right. He did what he needed to do. Yeah. He was, I can tell you this, he was a loyal guy on the street. He was respected, Sammy was. I never heard bad things about him when I was, on the street. Look, afterwards, I heard things after he became an informant, and people told me things that, John was a much better guy than Sammy. And my father even said that to me, because I had mentioned Sammy and he had told me, stay away from that guy. Don't ever associate with him. But, I've formed my own conclusions since then, because I'll be honest, I met with Sammy recently a couple of times. We've had conversations, and I didn't know him well on the street. I know him better now, and I like him. And, who am I to judge or question what went down with him? If that's what he says, he did 20 years in prison. He's trying to restart his life right now. He's worried about his kids and his grandchildren. So I respect that without a doubt.
I mean, the truth is, Michael, we know how treacherous this life is. We know there are rules to what goes on in these kind of criminal dynamics amongst people and conspiracies and all the rest of it. But when you're so deep in with the person, I can say this, and so loyal, and where you have so much to gain and so much to lose, then I would take the view of what you're saying, and I would tend to agree. Thanks for telling us that, because I always wondered about that, but I can get that a little bit more now. Now I wanna who do you think was the cleverest guy? Because in a life like that, Michael, you need skills, right? You need a very rounded set of skills. Some would have it, some wouldn't. But who was the most shrewdest guy or boss, do you think? I know there'd be a few, but who do you think was the most shrewd guy, Michael?
Well, the shrewdest guy, has to be Vincent Gigante, the Chin. And the reason I say that, because, for 20 some odd years, he pulled off being insane. And he wasn't insane. And he was at one time the most powerful guy in New York as far as the mob is concerned. He had the family with the most influence, and he ran it. He didn't want the attention. He was the opposite of Gotti. He was the opposite, total polar opposite. And he didn't like Gotti at all. But so he was very shrewd in the way he handled himself. And he was smart as a fox. I had the pleasure of knowing him and meeting him, and he was a very, very smart and shrewd guy.
Michael Franzese, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. We're going to speak again for sure. Thank you for them wonderful stories, and an insight to a fascinating and exceptional life, Michael. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, guys, to a wonderful new segment of The Big Shift with Stephen Gillen. Make sure to subscribe, go into stephengillen.com and sign up for more wonderful content to expedite, help, and support you on your own personal journey of success.